hear so many people say it's all about balance. When people talk about balance, they're talking about more time with their families, for contemplation, for exercise, for nature, for themselves. Have you guys wanted more balance in your lives? Yeah? However, in this view of balance, we seem to be implying if we want more of something, there must be less of something. It's a zero-sum game that we could never win. And if we did achieve balance for a little while, everything around us changes so fast that it could not possibly last, right? So instead of balance, I would like to suggest integration. The worlds that I'm in, rather than competing with each other, add to and permeate each other. More of what I mean by integration. However, I also think that at a conference like this, it's clearly a theme. We all know something about integration on so many different levels. It's such a diverse audience. We all know a lot about how to be in different cultures and different realms at the same time. For me, I grew up in China. I was born at a time and place when the standard of living is more akin to the Victorian. So if I think about the amount of human progress that I've seen with my own eyes, I feel I'm more than 100 years old, and therefore I have something to share. Now, I'm design director at LinkedIn without the inundation of a Silicon Valley life, which I know many of you know, and traveling the world for work and so on. However, I'm also a resident at a Zen temple called Jikoji, Compassion Light Temple. It's within an hour of the heart of Silicon Valley, even faster when I ride my motorcycle, but it feels as far away as Japan. Before I started living there, which is about 2 years ago, I didn't think I could make it work. I had a lot of doubts. I was already strapped for time, like all of us are. So how do I make more time for daily meditation schedule, the responsibilities of being a resident, and the longer commute? But like so many things in life, you just don't know until you try something. Your mind cannot imagine the possibilities. So once I started living there, I found that time took on a different quality. It became more spacious. So the two worlds that I'm in became actually both more rich, fuller with possibilities, and more magical. So my life changed from the inside out. I'm very lucky to have a Buddhist practice as well as a Native American practice where there is ritual, earth-based medicine, and a strong sense of community. All of my practices have taught me that the spiritual journey is really the integration of the relative and the absolute, and the realization that they're one and the same. So instead of balance, the picture is more like ink coming into water. When we drop ink into water, the beautiful swirls quickly reach off the water, and the ink and water become not separable. So from the standpoint of practice, we're practice and we're life. We're the ink and we're the water. The two become completely the same. So this is what I mean by integration, when one's practice and one's life become not separable. And that's what I call Buddhist alchemy. Alchemy is a transformation of baser materials into more precious materials. When we act from the standpoint of integration, what we touch is transformed into a sort of gold, which is wisdom. What we're doing here is a preparation work for Wisdom 2.0, which happens out there. So I feel there is a lot of urgency for this work. We can't wait to do this. And we have to act from a place of integration so as not to create more chaos out there, right? So the integration is not only for ourselves, for our own benefit, but for all beings. That's why we practice. And that's why it's actually happening all the time, because it's beyond the self. So as I talk about this, I want to make it clear that you already know of this. So I want you to feel your own body at this point. Take a breath in. Feel your senses, including your heart, one of your strong senses, where the world comes into you. and feel your hara, 2 inches below your navel, also called dantian, the center of your body, where your energy begins to touch your world, where your actions originate. Feel connected to yourself, to all beings. Feel what you know, your own integration. I'm talking with you because I know the experience of integration, but also because I know very well what it's like to be not that. For a lot of my life, I didn't know what it meant to feel connected to myself, to others, to life. I was a very shy child and struggled with connection with my parents and to others. In my preteens, I had a lot of physical anxiety in my body that I started to lose control of it, including stuttering. I felt I was looking down at a long future life of unspeakable hardship and isolation, which really scared me. What changed me and what saved me and connected me was little bits of nature. In China, there are lotus leaves, which if you haven't seen lotus flowers and lotus leaves, they're a sight to behold. The little water droplets on the lotus leaves roll around like mercury, perfect spheres, and the whole world reflected in them, which brought me so much joy and wonder. And the tall arches formed by the sycamore maples where I grew up would lift me and bring me to stillness the way one might feel walking into a beautiful church. In those moments, I felt like I tasted the secret of life. Do you want to know what the secret of life is, experienced by a 6-year-old? I felt like if I looked closely at anything, instead of that one color, I could see dazzling rainbows of colors in every facet of everything. And the sensation of that is like honey on the tip of my tongue, and my little taste buds rejoicing. The secret is this, that beauty is synonymous with meaning, and it is all around me, anytime that I wanted to return to it. Without consciously knowing it, and it is my belief that we actually all have this experience, especially when we're children. Without consciously knowing it, I tasted the sweetness of existence, which taught me what I know, what I've always known, which I'm sharing with you now. So I'd like to share a few discoveries that I've had along my journey of integration in the hopes that it could be helpful for you. The first is to see everything as practice and practice simply. So clearly not everyone can live at a spiritual center, and not everyone can or want to go on silent retreats. Those things are certainly useful, but the point of rigorous practice is for you to have the experience of being present with what is, which could happen with the dishes in your sink, the work on your desk. It could happen in traffic. It could happen now. And it could happen in meditation or any kind of practice that you have. Just to share a little bit of example for me, at the Zen Center, the day starts with 6 a.m. meditation session, Zazen. I'm not a morning person by any stretch, so it is and will continue to be a challenge for me. But I do it with simplicity, as much as I can. There is also a short ritual that follows it, with prostrations and chanting. I used to have some resistance to it, but now I embrace it. The prostrations feel good on my body, and the whole thing gives me a sense of openness and humility to start the day. So the word simplicity here may seem to conjure up monastic starkness that this little guy may represent for you, or it may bring up something like the 1950s. But that's not what I mean by simplicity. A world do not go backwards. By simplicity, I mean an attitude. It's a straightforwardness with vitality, a way to face everything and anything. It means doing one thing at a time and doing it with the fullness of your awareness and your capabilities. Treat whatever is in front of you, whatever you're given to do, as the best assignment of all, and something unexpected may emerge from that. So my work with that attitude has changed as well. Instead of the typical Silicon Valley sort of, overwhelmedness, I trust my ability to respond at any moment. On the surface, my work looks like anyone else in technology. Emails, meetings, ad hoc discussions, lots of content to grok, people to coach and manage. However, I was surprised to find myself thinking a great deal less than before. Somehow, actually, my life has become much richer, but I think a lot less, because this mind only knows so much. The body and the situation actually know so much more. So in the middle of everything is what you need to know. If you become that, a knowing comes, not a solution, but a way of navigating the territory. Couple of small examples. In a meeting, certainly disagreements may come, tensions arise, people seem to be at an impasse. I wouldn't know actually what the solution would be, but I trust my actions now. I would just lean in, offer something. It could be the beginning of a suggestion. It could be a bit of kindness for someone in the room. It could be simply noting what is happening. And most of the time, someone else would offer something, and so on. And the room would begin to shift, and we can again respond. Another example could be coaching my young Asian staff to let themselves be seen more, right? To speak up more at meetings. And I can recognize this in myself, for sure, from my years of learning how to integrate. So in my conversations with them, I bring up phrases like basic goodness or rightness, even though it's not the typical thing you would say in a corporate environment. And I may share a little bit of how things have shifted for me. And very often, they would ask me more. And in our conversation, I would see a certain kind of twinkle in their eye. And over time, my team have become more resource individuals. They can creatively try different kinds of interaction and get real-time feedback. And they have gotten so much more greater range in their ability. And they make the gesture of flying, and they say things like, "Thank you for trusting me." And so somehow, I've learned to, instead of technology, I'm in the transformation business. My job there is to transform people, no matter what it is, what it's looking like on the surface. My job is to remove the barriers of what is possible so that people can be anything that they want to be. So if I didn't know how to connect with people in my past, I've certainly learned a lot, and I'm very grateful for my community of practice, Sangha in Buddhist terms. One of my main discoveries living at the Zen Center, Jikoji, is how much one gains by being put into close quarters with those that you may not have chosen to be friends with. Georgia O'Keeffe said, "Seeing a flower takes time, like having a friend takes time." Over time, I've learned as much from the differences and frictions and the moments of laughter and with my Sangha as in all the rest of my practice. Moments of genuine conversation can live our entire lives. It's certainly not easy. It's a challenge for me as well, how to make time to just simply be with people. But I cannot recommend it highly enough. Create situations where you can share food, share chores, share cars, share children, share elders, share whatever you can, and then more. After time, a kind of deep bonding happens, and you simply love people. From that love, understanding emerges that wasn't there before. I seem to have, on a weekly basis, the most amazing experiences of my life. This is another one of those discoveries. A simple landscape can seem like the most beautiful thing I have ever seen. Simple food can seem like the most amazing sensation, and a simple connection can be the most delicious moment. I've certainly lived long enough to know that it's not the world that has changed, but that I have changed. And because I can recognize this from my childhood, I know that I have returned, or rather, that I can return to that open secret of life, that sweetness of existence, which is always there and always with us. Certainly, life is not always sweet and easy. So my next recommendation or suggestion is to step up to your karmic work. This is in the landscape near the Zen Center where a rock clearly has created a huge challenge for this maple tree. But by wrapping itself around the tree, the whole scene is beautiful, interesting, and powerful. As I was preparing this talk, also I heard the music of Nicholas McCarthy, the one-handed pianist. When he was applying to music schools, he was told to not waste their time and to not waste his own time. Talk about transformation. Talk about transforming one's own life and one's circumstances. In comparison, certainly, whatever I have experienced, pale. However, I have also faced situations where I didn't know what the solution could possibly be. I didn't even think I could face it, but somehow I do. So the karmic work is a really, really difficult situations in your life, but somehow it makes you feel so much more alive, like a warrior, because the challenges require all of you. And why me is a natural question. Why you is because this is how life purifies you. Sometimes the heart needed to be broken so that it can open and life can pour in. Sometimes it needed to be broken so much that it can remain open. And by facing your challenges, that's how you purify life. In recent years, I felt a little bit like I was standing on a battleground in the dawn light after the battle. I was standing and I can feel the morning sun on me. Sometimes I still feel a little bit shell-shocked, but I know that I have survived, and in that way I'm victorious, not against anyone, but in life. And by having faced my challenges, I can then be of help to others. And lastly, my suggestion is to tell your story. I used to have this worry that the different worlds I'm in might collide and people wouldn't know how to interact and integrate with each other. But that's just the mind trying to control and create separations doesn't really need to be there. So let yourself be seen, tell your story in all the realms of your life, and you will be facilitating the integration for others. And it is amazing how much people want to hear these kinds of stories because integration for them is happening at the same time. So to come back to where we started, I think instead of balance, it's useful for us to talk about integration. Balance seems to imply a sense of lack, an economic view based on scarcity. And paradoxically, with lack, there's also a sense of overwhelm. Whereas integration comes from the standpoint of abundance. Nature is abundant. Human systems create scarcity. We can return to that abundance. So there are many synonyms that I have used a little bit in this talk. Integration, beauty, meaning, stillness, eternity, wisdom, light, love, and I can go on. I must quote everyone's beloved Rumi at this point. Now, close this book. You know enough to close all books and to end all talks. All words and stories are just foreplay. I have something else in mind for us now. The spiritual journey is the joining of the relative and the absolute. And it is a human journey from birth until death. In that process, finding out what life is, because it is neither birth nor death. It is a shared journey that must be done individually. That process, at times, may feel incredibly alone, but know that the separation is just an illusion. Our lives are the most ordinary and the most extraordinary, the most mundane and the most magical at the same time. And it is so in every moment. So this is alchemy. We take everything in fully. We purify it through our body, mind, spirit, through our meditation. We transform it through our actions in the world, returning it to the source. This is what nature does, and this is what we do all the time. So thank you for all the wisdom that you have created in the world, and for all that you will create by being who you are. You, me, we are life, we're love, we're alchemy, we're the source. To live from that place, to practice continuously and quietly, that's integration. Thank you. And therefore, I have something to share. Now, I'm design director at LinkedIn without the inundation of a Silicon Valley life, which I know many of you know, and traveling the world for work and so on. However, I'm also a resident at a Zen temple called Jikoji, Compassionate Light Temple. It's within an hour of the heart of Silicon Valley, even faster when I ride my motorcycle, but it feels as far away as Japan. However, I also think that at a conference like this, it's clearly a theme. We all know something about integration on so many different levels. It's such a diverse audience. We all know a lot about how to be in different cultures and different realms at the same time. For me, I grew up in China. I was born at a time and place when the standard of living is more akin to the big. So if I think about the amount of human progress that I've seen with my own eyes, I feel I'm more than 100 years old. I hear so many people say it's all about balance. When people talk about balance, they're talking about more time with their families, for contemplation, for exercise, for nature, for themselves. Have you guys wanted more balance in your lives? Yeah? However, in this view of balance, we seem to be implying if we want more. Before I started living there, which is about 2 years ago, I didn't think I could make it work. I had a lot of doubts. I was already strapped for time, like all of us are. So how do I make more time? Daily meditation schedule, the responsibilities of being a resident, and the longer commute. But like so many things in life, you just don't know until you try something. Your mind cannot imagine the possibilities. So once I started living there, I found that time took on a different quality. It became more space of something, there must be less of something. It's a zero-sum game that we could never win. And if we did achieve balance for a little while, everything around us changes so fast that it could not possibly last, right? So instead of balance, I would like to suggest integration. The worlds that I'm in, rather than competing with each other, add to and permeate each other. More of what I mean by integration.